Who here would like to leave their loved ones with a financial blessing instead of a financial burden? By a show of hands. Yeah. Yeah, we all would, right? We make sure that you can leave behind a financial blessing instead of a financial burden, because at some point in time, we're all going to pass on. And I'm sure we've all lost somebody recently, especially since COVID happened. We've been seeing deaths left and right. And we'd hate to see you guys in a situation where the family has to do a GoFundMe to pay the funeral costs. I'm going to share with you a framework that you can write down and think about and carry with you so that you know if you're properly covered or not. We call it the DIME, D-I-M-E. Each letter represents a different component of life that needs to be covered with the policy. I personally don't really believe in what's called life insurance. It's a misnomer, because in reality, you can't replace a life, right? When you have a car accident and you have car insurance, you can use the policy to replace your car, right? If you have homeowner's insurance or renter's insurance and your residence burns down, you can use your policy to replace your residence, right? But if you have a policy, a life insurance policy, and God forbid you lose a loved one or you pass away, your family cannot replace your life. They can't replace your essence, your your joy, your laugh, your words of encouragement. Everything that you were is gone on this physical earth, right? So you can't replace life. But what you can use these policies for, you can use these policies to make sure you can send a check directly to your family to cover each of these items right here. The first item that you want to make sure you cover is the D, which stands for death, the costs of dying. We call those final expenses. All right? So for the DIME, just to recap, the D stands for the cost of death. The I stands for income replacement. M stands for any mortgages or debts. For education, or it stands for everything else. I have families that use policies to use as a tax shelter. But for the cost of the D, the cost of dying, a burial, cost of a cremation, cost of a mausoleum, we're going to do a trivia. Who here can guess how much it costs on average in the state of DC for a traditional burial? By a show of hands. If you get this answer right, I'm going to give you a gift. Now, it's like Price is Right. If you go over, you don't get a prize, all right? So you got to get as close to the right amount as possible. Yes, ma'am. All right, 6,000. Okay. Yes, sir. You got a guess? 11,000. Okay. Let's take one more guess. Yes, sir. 12,000. All right. All right. The gentleman right here, back here, he got closest to it. He said between 8,000 to 15,000. The average cost in the state of DC is $15,000 for a traditional burial. Let's give this gentleman a hand. Woo! The light of wisdom is shining on you today. This is a keychain light. There you go, sir. Appreciate your participation. All right. So that's the first. We got more trivia. Don't worry. Who here has their phone? Go look on Google real quick. Google how long does it take for life insurance to pay a claim. I want you to Google it for me and tell the entire group here today, how long does it take on average for a life insurance company to pay their claim? How much, sir? 14 to 60 days. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a long time for the family to have to wait to bury you. Wouldn't you agree? So that's why we don't do life insurance. To cover the D, you're going to need final expense insurance. It's completely different. If you open up your folder that's on your table here, the big difference with this company is that we pay our claims not in 14 to 60 days. We don't take 2 weeks or 2 months to do it. We get it done in 24 hours. That's a big difference, okay? That way, God forbid, if something happens to me on my way home, if it snows and I don't make it back home, God forbid, my wife isn't going to have to wait 2 weeks or 2 months, okay? She gets her check the next day, okay? So I've got a policy to make sure that she's not in a financial bind if, God forbid, I pass away today, all right? It's immediate coverage. It's whole life insurance. Lasts your whole life. We can go up to $35,000 with this plan. It comes with a living benefit, meaning that if you're still alive, while you're still alive, you can access half of your policy. I had a lady last year. She had the policy with us for 3 months. On the 3rd month of having the policy, unfortunately, she got diagnosed with a terminal illness, pancreatic cancer. So it was really unfortunate, but the blessing with this policy is she had $20,000 that she could access. She ended up taking half of her policy. You can access half of your policy, okay? So she took $10,000 from her policy while she was still alive, and she used it to pay off her funeral in advance. She was doing a cremation. She paid it off. And then she had still $4,000 left, and she used that $4,000 to take her family on a day cruise. So she got to have a really good memory before she passed on later that year, all right? So that's nice flexibility with this policy. She only paid $60 a month for it, so she only paid $180 before she was able to take out $10,000 from her policy. That's the beautiful thing with this plan. It goes immediately into effect. There's no waiting period. And God forbid, if you pass away, we pay the claim in 24 hours. Okay? The other thing that makes this plan the best plan to cover the D, not only do they pay in 24 hours, which is completely different from other companies out there, but also just about everyone can get approved. This company is 99% of people who apply get a policy, even if somebody has health issues. So I can literally set up a table in a dialysis clinic and help people at a dialysis clinic. Most other life insurance companies can't do that. They're very snobby with who they accept. The only health condition that we can't cover is if, God forbid, y'all were in a hospital, which you're not, by the grace of God, right? Can I get a round of applause? You know, that's a blessing. So the only health conditions are if you're in a hospital, if you're terminal, or if somebody had HIV. Those are the only 3 things, okay? Page 2. What I love about this plan that I got for myself and for my family is that I get to write down in advance how I would like to be laid to rest. This is something where I can write down that I would want a cremation, where I want my ashes to be scattered, who I want to sing, what kind of songs I want sung, what color urn I want. You can get all the details in writing in advance and mail it back to the company so that the family has a representative that can help them implement all those details. We compare 3 other funeral homes in the area for the family. So if I pass away, God forbid, my wife just makes 1 phone call, she gets her check in 24 hours, and she's going to have a representative, a funeral advisor that's going to help her get the lowest prices at the funeral home. Sometimes, unfortunately, they mark up the costs of all the items related to the funeral. A casket at a funeral home can sometimes be 3 or 4 times more than what the family actually has to pay. Who here knew that you could actually get a casket at Walmart? You can buy a casket at Walmart today. And guess how much it costs? It only costs about $1,000. But if you go to the funeral home, the same quality will cost $4,000 or $5,000. Mail it back so it's archived and saved. And then the personal funeral advisor will keep your wishes safe and secure. And then when that time comes, the advisor will help the family with all of those details. Price shopping, negotiating with the funeral home so that they're not taken advantage of. That's why we call our plan the Funeral Advantage Plan, because we make sure your family has the advantage instead of the funeral home. So this is something that I think everybody needs as a basic plan. Even if some of y'all already have some life insurance, that's a blessing. That's like an extra inheritance, okay? This is just something that we call the icing on the cake, okay? You already got your cake. You can eat it too, okay? This is something that's going to help everything go nice and smooth for the family. All your plans are taken care of in advance. And also, your family has a representative that's going to keep the costs low. And they're going to get a check that comes to them in 24 hours instead of 2 months. So that's the big difference with us. It's the icing on the cake. We're not trying to change anything that you already have. You can keep what you have if you want. You know, this is just the icing. All right. So with that said, any questions on the D part? All right. Let's talk about the other items here. Now, I'm going to kind of go through these other items relatively fast because we're not here today to really help people with these unless you really want us to. We can get our other companies. A lot of the communities that Brian and I serve, you know, y'all are already retired and on fixed incomes. So this is really a policy that applies for y'all because it's one of those policies that never goes up in cost. It's a small, affordable policy. And Brian and I will show you how much it is. It's different for each person's age. We're going to be here until about 3 o'clock today to answer those questions for you, okay? And to show you the quotes. It takes like 5 minutes, all right? The I stands for income replacement. So a lot of families want to use a policy to replace the income that you're earning. If y'all are on fixed income from Social Security, that's fine. But some families may want to have a policy that can replace their income to their spouse for several months or several years. A lot of times the families that Brian and I talk to, some of them are younger. You know, young families, they still got kids in the house. Maybe the wife and the husband are earning $50,000 a year, right? So for that situation, they may tell me that they want to replace their income for the next 10 years. So $50,000 a year for 10 years, they're going to need a $500,000 policy, okay? So it can be as much as $500,000, sometimes millions of dollars of coverage that Brian and I can help a younger family with. But if you're already retired and you don't have kids in your house, you may just need a smaller policy to cover your income replacement for maybe a few months so that your spouse or your loved ones can maybe move to a different place if they need to. So that's a $3,000 policy extra coverage or maybe $10,000 extra of coverage. Okay? So that's I. I stands for income replacement. Okay? The next piece, M stands for any mortgages or debts. M stands for mortgage. Okay, so in my situation, I've got a house that we're still trying to pay off, right? I have a policy that's $250,000 for the next 20 years because I got 20 years left on my mortgage. God forbid if I die while I'm trying to pay off my mortgage, well, guess what? I got a policy that's going to pay a check directly to my wife. My wife can take that check and give it to the mortgage company to pay off the house so that she can live in the house with my 2 kids without having to worry about any payments on the mortgage. So that's what M stands for. It stands for mortgage, or if you want to use a policy to pay off any debts. The last piece is one of my favorites. So E stands for education, or it stands for everything else. Maybe, I have a policy, for example, that God forbid if I pass away sooner than later, I already figured out how much it's going to roughly cost for their college bill if they want to go to college. So I got a big policy that's going to pay my wife and my kids so that they can go to college. Okay? Some policies are also used as tax shelters. Brian and I have some clients, especially recently, with crypto going through the roof. Some of our clients have been liquidating their crypto positions, and they have all this money, and once they put it into their life insurance policy, it's safe. It's no longer tied to the ups and downs of the crypto market, and it continues to grow tax-free. It's non-assessable. Whenever money is inside of a life insurance policy and a whole life policy, it can't be taxed. It keeps on growing, and they can still access it tax-free. So this is a way for some of our investors out here in the DC and the DMV metro area who are flipping houses, who are doing crypto trades, to actually keep their money safe after they take profits, all right? So this is a really cool strategy. This can be different for everybody. You know, some of our middle income families, they just want enough to cover the cost of education for their kids. That may be 150 grand. Some of our bigger clients, they need a policy to park their profits from liquidating their crypto. Maybe they need a $500,000 policy. And they can park a lot of their money into that policy over the next 7 to 10 years and keep it safe for all their generations, okay? Like I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, but if you have grandkids, maybe you want to have a policy that pays for their education, prep school or college expenses. So the cost of college is pretty expensive these days, right? Unfortunately. So let's say it costs $30,000 a year for them to go to school for 4 years. That's going to be $120,000, right? So, you know, if you want to talk about that, we can show you what that would look like. And this is completely customizable. Brian and I's job is to help you find, to cover these items, to find the best possible prices between all these different companies. I would hope that everybody at least gets one of these. But if you want to talk about the I, the M, and the E, we can talk about that too, okay? And once you cover all these pieces with a policy, you're well covered, okay? That's really what I wanted to do for the snack and learn today, to make sure y'all know how insurance policies work. Like I told you before, you can't replace a life. Everyone is invaluable, like tremendously valuable. You know, once you pass on, your essence is gone. All the words of encouragement that you would share with your family, you can't do that anymore. Policies cannot replace people, but they can replace the different costs that you may have later in life after you pass on. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, who here would like to come to our table for a few minutes with Brian or myself? We can look at some options with you today. Yes? Yeah. Yes, the D. Yes, ma'am. Okay, and okay, great.